welcome to our joint Harpers and Bodega Argento webinar mini-series, Growing Organically, a Natural Progression. This is part 2, focused on engaging the consumer. I'm Andrew Catchpole, editor of Harpers Wine Spirit, and I'm joined today by a highly knowledgeable panel, all with a wealth of experience and expertise on the subject of organic. They're also all drawn from quite different backgrounds and sectors to add differing insights to our discussion. A big thank you too to our sponsor, Bodega Argento, for making these webinars possible, and to Argento's winemaker, Juan Pablo, who once again is joining us today. Before I invite our panelists to introduce themselves though, a few words on this session and the complimentary webinar we ran yesterday. Yesterday's covered viticulture and winemaking, while today we're moving the conversation on with a fresh panel to discuss the challenges and opportunities for organic wine in the market, joining the dots, if you will, from grape to final consumer glass. Both these webinars will be available on the Harpers website, hopefully from this Friday, if all goes well, free to watch if you're unable to join us for that first session. Today, I'll again be prompting and guiding the discussion before opening up for an audience Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A function, which you should find at the bottom of your Zoom window. Before we begin though, it's worth referring back to a presentation delivered yesterday by Daniel Metier, head of wine at IWSR. This highlighted the growing importance of organic produce to consumers, even in the face of the pandemic and our re-emergence into an economically battered world. Against the headline stuff from that, headline figures, against a backdrop of flat or declining global wine sales, COVID and lockdown knocked the stuffing out of consumption, with IWSR research predicting that recovery will be slow, taking 5 years to return to 2019 levels. However, of the macro trends identified, considerations of health and ethical consumption have continued to strengthen. Between 2015 and 2019, global organic wine consumption grew at a steadily increasing pace, with markets such as Germany, France, the UK, and the US leading the world. Now here's the most significant part. Organic wine consumption is predicted by IWSR to grow from a 2.74% share of the global wine market by volume in 2019 to a 4% share over the next 5 years. Consider that against the backdrop of a potentially long and hard recovery for wine in general, and it doesn't take too much grey matter to work out that organic wine will continue to gain share, thus being a category that it would be wise to increasingly champion for the health of your business. Okay, with that, let's invite the panel to introduce themselves and get rolling. So, Lee, would you like to go first? A little on your background and experience?
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I'm the Senior Business Development Manager within Soil Association Certification Limited. So we are the lead organic certifier in the UK market. We are an organisation that's existed as a charity campaigning for better food and farming and land use since 1946. So we've been doing it for quite some time. Indeed, back when our founders gathered, we referred to organic farming as closed farming. There was this attempt to bring about a system that could close a loop around itself and not be reliant on external inputs. So today, as you alluded to, Andrew, we are looking at a £2.5 billion market in the UK for organic food and drink and textiles and cosmetics. And we continue as an organisation in 2 parts, as a charitable advocacy organisation lobbying hard for better policies and improved body of public opinion, as our founders called it, or aimed to do in the 1940s, and the certification entity, which has been around since 1973, continues as a subsidiary of that charity. So unlike many other certifiers, we gift aid the majority of our profit to our charitable parent. And I've been with the organisation for 21 years now, working with many organic businesses and brands, both nationally and internationally, to try and support them where we can, whether that's marketing, technical insights, or indeed getting more involved in our charitable and advocacy work. So yeah, that's me.
Excellent. So hopefully we'll be able to bring in some of the sort of the wider picture to complement those who are focused sort of very much on the wine side. Elizabeth, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so I have been in the wine industry for 16 years, and the last 8 years of that have been as part of the wine buying team for Marks and Spencer. Marks and Spencer has its own kind of social environmental scheme called Plan A, that oversees everything that we work on. So it's environmental aspects are always considered whenever we're introducing a new wine. I became a Master of Wine in February, and I did my research paper on establishing a sustainability scheme for the UK wine production industry, and I act as Deputy Chair for WineDB's Sustainability Work Group.
Excellent. And again, perhaps we can bring in some of your knowledge and expertise there on sustainability and where organic fits into that sort of more holistic kind of picture would be brilliant. Okay, Sara, word from, so I assume you're sitting in Sweden, perhaps Stockholm.
Yes, I'm sitting in Sweden, and right in front of me I have a cat who wants me to join. No, but I'm from Stockholm. I'm from Systembolaget, the stately owned monopoly, and we're in business with the vision of a society where everyone can enjoy alcohol without harming themselves or others. We, less than 10 years ago, when it comes to organic, we had an objective to reach 10% by 2020, and that will never happen, some people said. But we said, okay, we set an ambitious objective and see if we can reach it. Now we actually did reach it already in 2015. And for wine even earlier, actually, because this includes also spirits and beers. We are now for wine up to 25% growing, and now during the pandemic we've even taken a little bit further steps, even though we had growth in wine 10%, because people are not going to restaurants and people are not bringing alcohol in through the borders. So the strategy was very clear. We introduced new products of good quality, competitive pricing in different segments and styles. We did training with our staff. We secured good and we secured also that there were no residual pesticides or anything. We had a good timing with other retailers also pushing out organic products, and we also, I think, since we were a bit before the rest of the world, other markets, there were a good supply to get from good quality. And of course, the trends, the drivers behind that was health and well-being. You don't want to drink poison. You don't want to drink pesticides. I want to do good both for the people in the vineyards as well as for the nature, biodiversity, etc. And also it's natural. It's more natural. It's good for you. Plus, our suppliers started to convert existing products to organic in order to meet consumer demand and gain market shares. So markets with less percentage of planted areas of organic has lost market shares actually in Sweden. So now we're in for wine 25, and for the rest of the total assortment is 14.
Excellent. And I think we'll definitely be coming back to you because so your market is being ahead of the UK's, obviously structurally very different with the monopoly, but so obviously you can encourage and implement, but it's interesting, but I think it's a sort of signpost to the way that we are going here as well. Perhaps we're just a little bit behind, but we can discuss that in more depth. I can see Lee, you're nodding your head. Mark, a few words from you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Mark Palmer. My background is in marketing. I have spent my entire career in the food and drink industry. My first experience of marketing organic foods was in the mid-late 90s at Green & Black's, the organic chocolate company. And through my career, I've also worked for companies that have not been wholly organic, but have embraced organic as part of their offerings. I was the marketing director of Pret a Manger. I chair a coffee business called Union Hand Roasted, which is a direct trade coffee business that has organic coffees. And I work in the non-alcoholic drinks industry with Cawston Press and LA Brewery. So organic's been a part of my life really for from a marketing point of view for 20 years nearly. So
you've been immersed in it for a long time, and Green & Black's obviously was one of the I'd say it's one of the sort of the seminal, prominent kind of organic brands that hit the shelves, I think. So
very much so, and
we'll enjoy a bite of that along the way. And James, what can you tell us about yourself and your background?
Hello, everyone. As well as being a customer of Cawston Press, a keen follower of all things soil association, a shopper at Marks and Spencer's, a big fan of everything Sweden's doing with organic in particular, and a customer of Argento. My name is James Scott, and I am the Group Insight Director at C&C Group PLC, a PLC that includes Bibendum and Matthew Clark and tenants in Scotland, as well as Bulmers in Ireland. One of the things that we've always tried to do as Bibendum, as Matthew Clark, as C&C, is to understand consumers and to listen to consumers for the benefit of our distribution partners, but also our third-party supply partners, so that we can help them understand what the addressable market is of any given product or any given context. We speak to consumers on a regular basis. You'll be able to see all of the tools that we've got on proofinsight.com. And one of our key tools is something called Portraits, which is our community panel. So it's Portraits, it's a consumer portraiture. We've very cleverly changed the pour at the beginning to P-O-U-R. So if you are Googling it, you can find it there. It's the traits of how we pour and when we drink. It's all drinks, including non-alcoholic drinks as well. So we understand how consumers are engaging with different products. What are the challenges that they're facing? So we do lots of talking to consumers. And what I hope to do today is be a bit of a voice of the UK consumer and try and sort of bring some of their views to bear, so that we can then come up with some great plans for engaging them.
Excellent. The voice of reason, as it were. Fantastic. And Juan Pablo, and perhaps if you could introduce yourself, and as I say, I hoped you might be able to speak a little bit as our winemaking representative on the panel. Elizabeth notwithstanding, but you're rooted there firmly on the ground in Argento in Argentina. If you could talk a little bit about why you've embraced the organic program at Argento.
All right, so thank you, Andrew. Thank you for the invitation. A little bit of myself. I'm a winemaker. I study here in Mendoza. I live in Mendoza, and I've been involved with this company, Avinea Group, for the last 15 years. With Argento since the year 2012, approximately, with different roles, focus on local market, with the international bulk project that Argento has, with some research and development. And since last year, I'm on the direction of the winemaking team of the Avinea Group, and of course Argento as our largest brand and project. And a little bit about the organic concept. I'm gonna repeat some concept that I mentioned yesterday. We started with this organic concept that actually at the beginning was not organic. By the year 2009, when we planted our two main vineyards in High Agrelo and Altamira, the concept was to grow in a different direction of what we've been doing for the last 30-40 years, that it's the intensive agriculture, using pesticides, artificial fertilizers, and herbicides, especially to control weeds and to help manage the soil. That they've been very effective, but the thing is, we felt more comfortable with going in a more traditional way, like the old days at the beginning of the last century. That was a very easy way of management, with maybe more knowledge of the canopy management, of the soil management, of the weather condition management, in order to anticipate and be a step ahead of all the process. and of course reduce the use of pesticides and all the synthesis chemical industry products. And of course, the key point is to work on the soil. That it's maybe what it's all about. It's to work on the soil because, well, we are in an agriculture process. And about the soil, we decided to change what we've been doing in order to work in the old days way. And what we did was improve the soil nutrients by going back again to the mechanical techniques of moving the soil, of reincorporate all the organic matter we have after pruning, after cutting all the natural weeds and remove, chop them and integrate again into the soil. Decompact the soil, that is one of the most important concepts of this way of management. Decompact because we've been using machines for many years, and the soils are very compact, are like rocks, and that make the roots to live superficial, and we get used to the roots to be fed superficial, and that's not the best way to express a very complex concept as terroir. But as I mentioned yesterday, soil is one of the most important concepts of terroir, in the wine industry, the essence of a wine character is the soil is terroir. And when your soil is compact as a rock, you're not gonna extract the terroir. You're not gonna get into the best part of the best texture of your soil. So decompact, give oxygen to the soil to activate your natural microbiology, and reuse your organic matter from the winery, from the skins after pressing, from the cluster after the steam, and the pruning material, all this after a compost and reuse in the soils will improve our soils, and that's the best way to push our roots, the root system of our wines, to go into the soil and look for the terroir and connect the vines and the clusters and the wines with the terroir. So after all this concept, of course, was a natural concept, and well, by the end of the story, to officialize this, to put the label and to be controlled by somebody from a third party, somebody else, we move into organic certification, and so that's the end of the story, to show to the world Argento organic products, but there is something else behind being organic, being green, having a healthier product. It's about quality. We start thinking about quality.
Excellent. And I suppose the obvious question to ask there is, I don't know if you can give an answer very briefly, but how has, in your opinion, the wine or wines changed? I mean, what's the evolution there been?
Well, the idea to go in that direction was because we truly believe, and we have checked on that the quality of the wines is much better. The wines taste richer, with better acidity, with a better terroir expression, and it's not only a theoretical concept. We check that every harvest when we compare the results and the quality, the color, the freshness, the juiciness of the wines coming from organic vineyards or traditional vineyards, if we want to be clear on that. If we compare with the intensive management vineyards, the results are different. We prefer the organic wines, but not because we know they are organic. It's because they have better flavors, better acidity, and that's because the root system is is inside a deeper soil, and they are structuring and they are connected to the best part of the terroir, you know?
Yeah, so real demonstrable differences in terms of the character and perhaps quality and qualities in the wines. And I think that's probably key as well, isn't it? It's doing it for the right reasons, considering the environment and health, but also the wines have got to be as good, if not better. Otherwise, they're just being bought on a sort of a sympathy vote or an eco vote or a whatever. And I think that's really important. I see Lee sort of nodding his head, but we'll come back to that as well. So let's throw it open and start a more general discussion.
Just a quick.
Lee, you might be.
Sorry,
yes.
just a quick question to Jean Pablo. How about yields? How have yields developed?
I think there is a big myth about yields. Of course, when you grow intensively, of course, at the beginning, in the first years, you can have a great result if you do a macro fertilization and you have a perfect control of everything, of pests, of herbicides, no competition with the vines. Maybe the first, I don't know, 5 years, you could have a great result. But if you think in a midterm or a longer term, the results of organic are going to be a balanced yields, you know, a balanced vineyard. And if you compare to the intensive vineyard, it's going to give you a lot of production in the first years, but then it's going to go down for sure. I've seen that, I have checked that, and a great proof of that is we have in Mendoza what we call the first zone, that is Major Perdriel, Agrelo, and some places in Uco Valley or Eastern Mendoza. You can find vineyards that are 100 years old and that were managed in that way, and they are still producing. I'm not saying they are producing 20 tons per hectare, because I will be lying, but they are still producing 5, 6, or 7 tons after many times. But the quality of those vineyards is great. So I can talk for Argento experience. Our Agrelo vineyard is producing very as an average of 12, 13 tons per hectare every year, and we are very happy on that.
Excellent, and thanks, Sarah. It's interesting. Okay, I'll just steer it towards the market and engagement with organic wine, or indeed organic food and drink. I think I'll start there and then draw it towards wine. And I think a question perhaps you could pick up first, Mark, with your 20-odd years experience on the marketing side through various different categories: chocolate, beer, coffee, etc. What are there still challenges that face organic food and drink in terms of consumer perception? What is it that's sort of holding back some consumers from taking the plunge? Is it cost? Is it fear that the products in some way aren't as hermetically kind of aren't as kind of well produced, basically, or reticence from those selling the products, the gatekeepers? I mean, what challenges are still there? What barriers still need to be brought down?
I think for some customers, there's still a perception and perhaps reality that organic food and drink is significantly more expensive than the pricing that they are used to, even from premium choices within some category. That's definitely reduced over time, but I still think that's a factor. Availability of organic food and drink products and brands has increased dramatically over time, but there are still difficulties for consumers in easily finding organic choices, particularly in some trade channels. Grocery is more, and supermarkets are more advanced than perhaps the convenience channels, for example, in the UK market. And I haven't seen any very recent research, but I think there is still a general suspicion from some customers that organic is an ethical badge, but one that doesn't necessarily correlate with with the promise of fantastic taste. And I mean, it is 20 years ago nearly now, the work we did on Green and Blacks, but Green and Blacks was perceived as an ethical champion brand. But when we spoke to customers, there was a real nervousness that the chocolate actually would not taste very good. It was described as charity chocolate, well-meaning, but chocolate's about indulgence, and organic can't be indulgent. And I think there's still a little bit of that out there, but without doubt, as the years go by, I think customers are realizing that organic food and drink generally tastes delicious and is not just a sort of eco-warrior positioning. It's about taste and quality, and the market has moved on so much from those days. So that's perhaps not as big a barrier as it used to be, and I think probably not the same barrier as availability and cost. I still think they're probably the major reasons that customers struggle to buy into some of these categories.
Excellent. And Lee, would you tend to agree with that, or is my question now, should it? Well, I'm sure it should be redundant, but is there still some worth in addressing the challenges and any negative associations around it, or is that really old history, or we kind of really got well beyond that?
I think Mark's quite right to point out that cost and availability are still big challenges. So, for example, we don't necessarily communicate particularly well as brands, as a sector, around the issue of true cost. So, we may buy product which is arguably, if it was washing its own face, it would actually be more expensive naturally, because we hide some of the cost of our shortcuts and our not so great practice in agricultural supply chains and food supply chains, and we pay for those in other ways. Now, I find it quite extraordinary that we have 4 in every 10, I think the figure was, of farmers in the UK living on the poverty line, whereas we have a similar number of children leaving school who are obese. So we have this massive mess around joining the dots between, certainly in the UK, between land use, appropriate land use, going back to Juan's issue about yields. That really is a bit of a myth. It's about growing the right stuff in the right place and eating the right diet. I think we have to kind of join this up. But going back to the market, I would say that once consumers can be made to understand that, it is we're a relatively small part of the market. I think we're about 2.5% of all food and drink in the UK is organic. So we're going to have some costs associated with that scale. But if we can make consumers understand what they're really buying into, the fact that we're being more honest in many ways, and that's putting us on the back foot in some respects, and also deal with the availability issue. I think we've got more progressive, enlightened retailers now than probably we had back in 2008, when I watched with horror as the UK's organic market started to go backwards. We were probably, I think, other than Norway, we were about the only advanced market in the EU that did go backwards. And that was really because of the global recession at the time, this sense that consumers were going to start tightening their belts, and that anything premium, including organic, because it was really a shortcut to premium. So that gives you a sense that we were addressing the quality issue by then. But there was a sense it wasn't going to be demanded, so it should come off the shelves. And I think I'm pleased to be able to say that we are in a similar position at the moment. We are looking into a potentially recessionary space, but the good news is those retailers are more enlightened about it being genuinely a sustainability choice that is established, entrenched, that appeals to the increasingly planet-centric consumer. And some retailers, I'm not going to mention names, but are particularly good at identifying it on shelf, particularly in the wine aisle of my local unmentionable premium tier retailer. They have a green O on the shelf edge ticket. I can home in on those organic products really easily. We need more to do that, and we need that strategic thinking about organic as part of a long-term strategy for those retailers. And I'm pleased to say we're getting there, which is a relief, because they still command about 2/3 of the market for organic in the UK as a sales channel. But finally, I'll just say on wine in multiple retail in the UK, we're seeing 35% growth in 52 weeks to May in still wines. So that's against a comparative 6% growth in non-organic still wines. So that's a huge difference. Consumers are really buying into organic wine for a number of reasons we may not get historically, that we may not get time to address. There are nutritional benefits. There is an understanding of pollution associated with vineyards historically. There's lots of, and the terroir, there are lots of things going on that are really exciting. And if I talked about sparkling wine, then the difference is even bigger in those retail figures.
Yeah, no, it's. I think that leads into one of the questions I was going to ask, and perhaps we can explore it in a little more depth. But you know, there's been much said on the, especially the lockdown period of the pandemic, and wandering around with clear skies, no traffic. It's been blissful cycling and walking around town or out in the countryside. And really, I think that does seem to, and not just anecdotally, kind of accelerated people's interest in sort of health and well-being, in provenance and authenticity. These were all trends that were obviously there before, as you're suggesting, but it does seem to be an acceleration. And while there might be some sort of fall off in terms of that acceleration, one suspects that people will continue to move down that path without question. So, Elizabeth, talking of quality supermarkets and encompassing food and drink as you do your experiences on the shelf kind of bear that out, bear out what Lee and Mark have been saying? And also, to add an additional question to that, food versus drink, I'd be really interested to know how the buy-in is for food and how that compares with wine. I mean, do organic sales compare as a percentage? Is wine behind, ahead, etc.? So what's the experience on the shelves of M&S?
I think it's similar between food and wine. I don't have as much of the food numbers as I do on wine, because that is the focus of my role. But M&S as a total has doubled its number of organic products in the last year. It's something we've been working on for quite a while. And at the same time, we have doubled the wine range, if from a very small point of view. As I say, we do have had this Plan A work that we've been doing for a long time. And so whilst the organic range is smaller, 65% of our range does have some sustainable certification, or the producers are working towards it. And so environmental aspects are very important to us. We used to get a lot of feedback when I first started at M&S from in-store staff who talked to customers, and the customer's perception was having the organic badge on the wine might make it more expensive, but not necessarily any more quality. And I know as a consumer, when I'm going to go and buy fruit and veg or meat, when I pick up something organic, I am expecting some kind of quality aspect there. So when we do tenders, we definitely look at organic wine, but it definitely has to pay for itself on shelf, as in we're expecting to have that kind of quality price ratio from the wine. We're not just going to list a wine just because it's organic, because that's not going to do the organic industry any good. Because if you have something that's organic and doesn't show the quality, then the customer is going to not pick up an organic product next time, because they're just not going to see any benefit. So the most important thing is that the wine is delicious, and then the next aspect would be that we're looking for that kind of environmental certification. I guess the other issue is kind of volume. So if we're talking about a high volume line, then you're going to struggle to get that organic certification, because there's generally less available. Having said that, we've introduced 3 lines that we're using in our dine-in offer. So dine-in for £12. So they're high volume lines from Spain, which means we get to show the organic wines to a bigger customer base who might not necessarily pick it up. And we've just launched a Prosecco, so one of the key sparkling wines in the UK market, and that's at £9 as well, so a really good price point. So we are trying to do that work so customers can pick up something that's organic and be able to afford it.
And just for our audience out there and anyone who's watching the recording of the webinar later, I mean, how at M&S are you flagging up? Are you signposting and directing customers to organic, or do you just tend to leave it to the label?
So it's on the label, but it's also on our shelf edge tickets. So we've just revamped our shelf edge tickets so that there's a nice organic symbol on there as well now.
Okay, fantastic. James, can I bring you in there? And what are you finding at Bibendum as part of the insights team? We talked a little bit about the sort of this growth of organic, the change or the acceleration of the ways in which consumers are looking for provenance, authenticity, they want quality, they want a quality bang for their bucks. Sustainability in all its forms, and certainly organic, is part of that. What are you unearthing, and what are you looking ahead to as a company in terms of how you'll be advancing the organic side of your portfolio?
Well, there's a number of questions in there. I think to put what we're discussing here into context, I think it's important to understand the breadth of consumer feeling out there. So we've talked, I've heard terms, you know, a planet-centric consumer, that we've got big growth in certain areas, and that's fantastic, and it's true, and I want it to continue on a personal note. But what we also have to recognise is that 37% of the UK population actively reject or are unconcerned about environmental issues. It's just not on their radar. Then you've got a further 41% will look to buy sustainable, organic products if they can afford it or if they remember to, but it's not front of mind for them. So we're only talking about really 22% of the market for whom organic products and sustainable products are front of mind. And at the moment, I think we're confusing them, because we're not having, you know, the clarity of communication around what is organic in the context of sustainability, in the context of biodynamicity, also in the context of naturalness, which in other product categories, you know, natural is used alongside organic as a sort of one, you know, parts of the same theme, whereas in wine it's not, and it's causing greater levels of confusion. So we have to understand our addressable market. So at Bibendum, we've been using our portraits community we've spoken to over 8,000 consumers in the last 2 months. You know, key part of COVID is understanding how people are reacting to the economic pressures that they're under, and what they're going to do. You know, as part of that, we have understood that there are only 22% actively interested. To put the 37% of rejectors into context, if you think about the adults in Great Britain, that's approximately 12.2 million people. Sweden's entire population is 9.9 million, there or thereabouts. So it's a huge amount of people that are rejecting it. But you know, equally, we've got 7.5 million people that we want to be able to talk to and want to be able to get these messages across to. They're not evenly spread. It's not 22% of everywhere. So we use the data that we've got to understand regionally how people are reacting in different ways. And that helps our partners to put the right products in the right place at the right price. And then when it comes to the communication, you know, we talked about labels and shelf markers. It's quite interesting in terms of the decision tree and the time. As a general rule of thumb, you know, we've used from some work that we've done with our panels, the average consumer reads about 6 words on a label. And to put organic in its context, work that YouGov did put organic is 11th on the list of product label considerations. So they will be reading, you know, there's not a very, very high dwell time. You know, the only category I've ever come across where there's a dwell time of more than 30 seconds was the sleeping aids category, because people desperately want to get to sleep. In other categories, you're there, you're busy, you're time pressured, you know, time poor. So you're reading an average of 6 words, and all you're really looking for is environmentally friendly and sustainable production. You're looking for key words that say that, because they're your number 1 and 2 in terms of, you know, for the 22%, 7.5 million people who are interested, their number 1 thing that they want to see is the environmentally friendly or sustainable production. And so organic is good, but what we need to, I think, work on collectively is how do we get, you know, umbrella terminology that can help with consumer recognition, so they can instantly see something in the same way that, you know, people might recognize the leaping bunny for cruelty-free. You know, what's that symbol? You know, Lee, it might be the sort of association symbol, but I'm unclear right now, and I know for a fact that consumers are too.
Yeah, can I just jump in there, Andrew, and just say, you know, I don't disagree with what you say around the percentages and the order of which this is, you know, of importance in terms of messaging. I think, given that I think, as I mentioned, still wine in retail is still under 1% organic. We still got a long way to go. We are quite small. I think it's a growing global trend. I think the growth rates in other developed countries and organic markets are much better than the UK's. And I think there's a whole backstory behind that around that lack of, coming together and being kind of single-minded as a nation. We have brilliant government-funded campaigns in places like Sweden, Agence Bio in France, similarly. We are the poor man of Europe when it comes to actually, getting behind what I should say, in a world of greenwash and unsubstantiated claims, is a codified, legally defined terminology, which you can refer to a piece of regulation which talks to you and speaks to you about the legally binding and independently audited requirements that have to be followed for the benefit of wildlife, animal welfare, environment, etc. So I do agree with what you're saying. I think it's all about getting behind something which is codified and really where we can be honest and open with consumers.
I think that, yes, sorry, James, and then I'd like to bring Sarah.
One of the things that was brought to my attention whilst we were having some focus groups on this matter, and we were sort of really digging into this area, was that you're not obliged as an organic producer to put your product in a sustainable package, which just strikes me as ludicrous. And something that, if we can't join the dots up on that, then I think we're asking our consumers to take a bigger leap than we're prepared to. So it's just simple things like that. I think if we can, with the right producers, taking that fantastic organic product, and as Juan Pablo said, if it tastes better and we can get it for the same price, then it's a no-brainer for the consumer. You make it really, really easy because they want us to build in these quality markers, make my life easier, make me, I want to be able to showcase my credentials. So let me buy a product that gives me everything I need from an organic, sustainable proposition and in one package that I can pay for, that's not going to break my bank, and they will follow you. So I think if we can just join those dots together, we'll have a real breakthrough.
Thank you. Yes, and Sarah, could I bring you in as well on the back of those comments? I think Lee made the link to Sweden and being ahead. Obviously, as I said earlier in the session, a very different setup and scenario with a monopoly. But what pointers could you perhaps give to the UK, if indeed you agree we're lagging behind, you and other Nordic countries? What could we better do to progress consumer engagement with organic wine?
He's on mute.
Sorry, did you manage to hear my question there? I don't know sort of whether I dropped out or you did.
I dropped out, sorry. No, but I very much agree there with James. It's complicated for the consumer to make good choices, to be a good citizen, and especially if you have an organic wine in a heavy bottle. I mean, that's terrible. And I think that's the challenge now for organic. It's not only organic, I think, that we are going now. We're going beyond in Sweden. We're going beyond organic. So I think to just talk about organic, I'm not sure, probably that's a way forward also for the British market, not only for the Swedish market. And if you look at the Swedish grocery stores, they are actually opting for other things now. They have a good proportion of organic, but they are losing market share with organic because there are vegan, vegetarian, that's locally produced. There is, difficulties to get the right volumes, like you said. We are more different markets competing about them. No, I think that it needs to find, and I think it was you as well, James, who talked about a holistic approach. You need to package all these different sustainable aspects on a product in order to be genuinely doing something good. And it's about packaging, it's about how it has been produced, it's about how it has been transported, and it's about might be other things as well. But that's what we are looking into now. How can we make it easy for the consumer to choose it? Because if it's difficult to find the organic wines, because it's a hard choice to find or to understand. I mean, it's to be really sustainable in the future. It's much more complicated. So that's what we are looking at now. How can we package that for the consumer to make a good choice? Where organic, obviously, will be a part of a sustainable product, a sustainable offer.
So I think that's a really interesting point. I don't know if anyone else would like to pick up on that, but the sense that organic would be one of the sort of building blocks of a wider, holistic, sustainable package. Also, how it relates to a question that Rose Murray Brown, MW, out there in the audience. Hi Rose, has asked, which kind of relates to exactly what we're talking about. So I might as well bring it in now. She's asked, given the sharp increase in online sales to consumers in the UK, how many wine companies are actually using environmentally friendly packaging, and how many logistic / delivery companies are carbon neutral? How can we persuade them to change? Without going fully into that, I think we're sort of covering some of that ground. So basically, that the whole package has to work for the consumer. It has to be cohesive, I think. So, which is
Andrew, a little comment.
Yes.
In the side of the of this size, as a producer, we clearly agree with all the panel, and I mention this because, for example, our organic products, and we've been discussing about organics, and that's the reason I didn't mention. But for example, the products we are showing in the UK are not only organic. They are organic. They are fair trade certificated. They are sustainable. There is a local law of sustainability here in Mendoza that it's under Bodegas de Argentina. So we apply on that, and of course we use the lighter bottles. I don't want to mention specific our product because it's not the case, but it's the lighter bottle we have on our design. So of course you have to have a coherence on that, and it's a full package of organic sustainability and environmentally care about the situation, and well, that's a complete concept.
And I think we do have a challenge, don't we, in the wine, indeed the wider drinks trade, with the packaging. I mean, things are starting to happen. We're seeing more, wines in can. We're seeing more wines in other lightweight and recyclable kind of packaging. Glass obviously is recyclable as well, but it's actually the weight of the carton, the container for shipment, which is causing problems. So seeing lighter weight bottles is fantastic, and that can help to cut down. And maybe bring you in, Mark. Actually, do you see from your experience in listening to this discussion, is wine out there on a limb when it comes to putting an organic product in a bottle, but then actually the rest of the supply chain, the packaging, etc., doesn't quite sort of meet up to the sort of hopeful kind of environmental kind of credentials that organic might be signaling? I mean, does it differ with other products? Are other products better at doing it? Are most chocolates and coffees, they come in completely sort of recyclable, disposable, low carbon footprint packaging? How does wine compare?
I think this is a much wider food and drink challenge. I don't personally think wine is behind anybody else, really. I mean, there are examples within categories of individual brands that are making good strides with their packaging, and particularly direct to consumer brands who are trying to have that one-to-one engagement. But the issues around packaging and how to transport products are, I mean, certainly in soft drinks, it's exactly the same issues. And there are strides being made to reduce multi-pack packaging, shrink wrap, paper straws instead of plastic straws. So there are certainly more initiatives than there have been. But no, I see this as a total food and drink industry challenge.
Does anyone else want to pick up on that? I mean, Elizabeth, any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's difficult. Yes, if we're sent a wine in a really heavy bottle, we're considering taking the wine, we'll ask them to use a lighter bottle. When I was doing research for my research paper, there was a stat from California wine sustainability scheme saying that over a third of the carbon footprint of wine does come from the packaging. So it's something really, really important to consider. I think a lot of things like wine in cans, and we've launched 3 of them this year, but they're still quite new for the customer. And when we've tried to introduce wine in PET bottles, customers haven't picked up on that, because I think they do still feel that a slightly heavier bottle does show a mark of quality. So it's getting that message across to customers. It's important. But and the other issue obviously with glass is there's been a trend towards a lot of more clear glass, especially for products like rosé, which has a higher carbon footprint because they can use less recycled glass in it. So it's something that, yes, everyone needs to work towards and find a common result.
A sort of slight change in perception as well. It kind of amuses me and irks me. Where I'm sitting at the moment, up behind me on the English Southern Downs, there are windmills, which are tourist attractions. And if I look ahead of me out to sea, there are windmills generating electricity for the county here, which apparently are a sort of atrocious devastation of the view and the environment. And it's just kind of slightly odd. It's a sort of slight shift of perception. Why is one favoured because it's old, and the new one that's saving the environment is causing ructions? But so I've thrown myself slightly with that anecdote. Where I wanted to bring it to then, and James, I mean, you spoke very clearly, as others have, about the percentage of people who are actively engaged with organic, with sustainability, both in their life when it comes to purchasing habits. What cues, activations, marketing strategies can and could prove most effective, not just to help drive these people to engage more with organic wines and sustainability generally, but to pull in some of those people who have it sort of halfway up on their list, or it's way down there at number 7 in terms of consideration on the labels. Did you want to pick up on that, James, or
yeah,
open
absolutely.
to anyone on the panel?
Well, I think there are a couple of things just to build on the point that's been made, to segue into it. Is we've stats are always a reflection of who you've spoken to at that given moment in time. The good thing about the environment that we are in, if there is a good thing, is that we have spoken to 8,000 consumers in the last few weeks. So we've spoken to a lot of people, but there is still that perception around organic products, and it's 72%. So we're talking roughly 3/4 of consumers that you speak to perceive organic to be more expensive. And then if you marry that up to the challenge that wine has always had, is that it is it's attached to 75 cl glass, and it's a hostage to it, and has been for a very, very long time. Other packages, major brands, I'm sure they won't mind me naming them, Maltesers, Andrex, plenty of other products have shrunk their packages in order to retain margin and pricing over the years. Now, margin and profit is not a dirty word when it comes to retail. You need to be able to retain enough income to be able to invest in a high quality product. And wine has always struggled as a consequence of it being a hostage to 75 cl glass. So in a world where you've got this perception of organic being too expensive for people, then innovations in packaging allowing us to repackage and move away to an extent from 75 cl glass can only help. And I look at the way that Cawston Press are packaged, the 1.5 litre tetras that allow me to buy my rhubarb and apple juice is fantastic. Those are the types of packages we should be looking at. Now, during the lockdown, we've seen, since the start of 2020, IRI is saying £1.5 billion has been added to BWS. So in the off-trade, £1.5 billion of the UK has been added since the beginning of 2020. Wine is the #1 growing category, the #1 by some margin. And within that, we've seen a fantastic growth in 2.25 litre bag in boxes across multiple retail, which is a real surprise. Frankly, no one saw it coming. It was the same people who were buying this category, but they've been attracted situationally. A new consumer has been attracted to it, and now we're starting to see some innovations. So if we can see some premium products coming in, 1.5 litre potentially, 2.25, 3 litre in that packaging with that proposition, that could be great. And then, so that was just sort of building on what I've just heard, from everybody there in terms of what's important and some of the challenges. some of the ways in terms of reaching consumers, that the 22% of people that are engaged, they're not all the same person, and they're not in the same part of the country. Some look like us, some really don't look like us at all. They will have very, very different interests. In fact, there's a high proportion of what we would call revelers, our reveler portrait, who are young at heart people, love an up-tempo occasion, who are really conscious about their planet, about sustainability and the environment. And reaching them is a very, very different way of doing it. I don't know whether any of you have seen Organic Valley Fuels web-based advert in America, where they have got it's an absolutely fabulous video called Save the Bros. I recommend it to all of you. It will not necessarily be targeting you, but it's about people that need protein to go and work out in the gym. And it's about a fuel product that is organic. And as part of the message, it says you don't have to tell them it's organic, just tell them it's full of protein. And so it's about understanding your audience and approaching it in a sort of humorous way. And the best way of doing that is literally understanding who that audience is and the addressable market you're going for, and then activating it in a fun and relevant way.
Yeah, I'd completely support that, James. And I think we've always understood organic to be a supportive message whenever we've run focus groups with consumers to ask them what's important. And as you say, the most successful brands find their segment, find their message, and organic is used to support that. That's certainly been the case. I think overall, though, the tide comes in and out on organic, and has done many times, I think, over the 20+ years I've been involved. And each time it comes in stronger. So we have these conversations about, should we be broader? Can we resolve the packaging differences? And I know certainly we've got a lot of organic businesses that are very pioneering on that front. We're also trying to develop and strengthen standards, but not alone, but in collaboration with all global organic standards, because it's no good if we go off on our own in the UK. And we're also, we're also going down this kind of road of including more social stands. We're trying to kind of keep it holistic as we can and be that one-stop shop. But I think overall, it's still, I don't know about your research, but when we talk to consumers, the one thing over the last few years that really stands out is mistrust, and growing mistrust of us in the food industry. So the one thing we really need to do is work out how to get their trust back. We live in a world of fake news, misinformation, and they really need those reassurances from us and need to know that we're being honest with them.
100%. Oh, Andrew, you're on mute. One thing I'm going to use this opportunity to build on with Lee is around gluten-free. Now, gluten-free is quite a similar thing in terms of messaging. A lot of beer, many major beer brands that you may or may not know are gluten-free, but their research says the people that they're trying to sell to would be put off than attracted to the brand, and so they don't say it's gluten-free. Now, that's not the case for everybody, but it's understanding there which messages are important to my target audience, and then for that audience, how do they want me to get that across?
Okay, yeah.
So okay, yeah. Mark, do you want to pick up on that theme and what you've learned along the way about, and specifically, I think if we could address that last point, because that's presumably absolutely key. You want to turn on the people that will be turned on by the messages, by certain messages. You don't want to turn off the others that will be, put off by those same messages. So how do you kind of differentiate? How do you bring all of that into one place and have something coherent surrounding your brand or product?
I think it's about getting your message hierarchy in the right order, and good brands always have depth and many layers, and it's about saying the right message in the right place. If you try and have everything fighting, all the messages fighting each other for top billing, the customer tends to check out. It's not an easy brand for them to understand. But I mean, I think something like gluten-free, perhaps for many brands, it's not the front and center message, but as a badge of reassurance in and around the ingredients and nutritional information, I think that's probably the natural home for that, for a brand for whom gluten-free is not their primary reason to purchase. So I think all these messages are important, but they just need to be delivered in the right place with the right level of emphasis. And it comes back to, as marketeers and brand owners, being clear around your proposition and who is the audience for that brand. And then you can answer the questions around around hierarchy. And then when you get into marketing communications, you know, I think the big brands are always trying to find one single-minded message that they blast that out with mainstream media choices. I think there are so many opportunities now to, you know, not worry so much about the people that don't understand the brand, but to empower the fans of your brand to tell others and to keep the stories flowing. And if I had one major learning from the Green and Blacks experience, it was just about the, you know, the power of the crowd almost, who were already the evangelists for Green and Blacks, and just making them feel even more in the know and part of the marketing, and just arming them with, you know, recommend a friend type mechanics. They will do the marketing for you, and it's often more, I think, more effective than just a big broadcast message trying to persuade people who perhaps need, you know, a huge amount of persuasion. And you know, I think organic is continuing to prove to be a very underlying long-term trend, and the market continues to grow, and customers will introduce it to each other. They just need to be given the right tools to allow them to spread the word.
Yeah, and Sarah, maybe I could bring you in. I mean, it strikes me that organic is, as a message, we've talked about all these, in a way, competing sort of things going on under a broader sort of sustainability umbrella. So there's almost a confusion of messages. And I believe when we were both on a panel before looking at sustainability, you were showing slides. It may actually be of the Finnish market, but correct me if I'm wrong. But there were so many different kind of you know, bits and pieces on the labels on the shelves, ticking different boxes, saying this is sustainable, this is organic, this is free of something, this has got this added. Isn't organic, though, just a very clear message that consumers can pretty much fully understand? And is that in itself not a strength?
Yes, certainly. And I think that if Systembolaget had tried to move the hands of our customers on our own, we would probably not have been successful. It was sort of a timing with other stores. And I think this is other grocery stores. And this is probably what we need to do now when we have the climate crisis, and we know what we need to do, and we need to do it now. And I can't refrain from talking about the glass bottles. A lighter glass bottle has 5 times the climate impact as a tetra. And you can imagine if we are to save this planet, we need to move away from something that feels very much wine. It's glass bottles. But and probably there will be new consumer demands, and also new producers daring to take the step and go ahead of sort of the rest. And we were actually now launching more expensive wines and tetras, and a small Italian natural wine producer who are launching small pouches of natural wine. So I think there's something happening, and probably it's the next generation that will help us move it.
Yeah, let's move on. And Elizabeth, I guess I'm realizing the time actually, and sort of trying to sort of work towards some conclusions and wrapping up. And Juan Pablo, let's bring you in a moment as well. Be interesting to see what you from the winemaking side think of what's been said from the UK and European I suppose sort of marketing and engagement side. But Elizabeth, any more or sort of towards final thoughts you'd like to add in on how to progress organic, specifically speaking from the M&S point of view, or across the food and drink sector as a whole in the UK? Where do we go next?
I think it's going to grow if we get more products on shelf. And so it's finding the producers that are making the organic wines that have the right quality and the right volume that we need. And as with all things, it's just about working with our suppliers. So, I mean, we work with suppliers on sustainability, and in a lot of countries, sustainability has been a stepping stone to organic. So there's a lot of producers in New Zealand that have had to become members of SWINS, which is a Sustainable Wines New Zealand scheme, that are now looking at taking the next step towards organic. So I guess it's just working with suppliers to make sure they're doing what they need to do to get to where we want them to be. and it's never going to be a fast process, but as long as you have that target. I mean, at the moment we're working on vegan wines, and we've given the suppliers by 2022 we want to be 100% vegan, and that helps reduce some of the other inputs that go into wine in terms of fining and that kind of thing. And so after that, if we then looked at other aspects of production to try and get them to more sustainable production or organics, yeah, I think that's important, just having that relationship. I think you're on mute, Andrew.
Can I just quickly add something to that, Andrew?
I keep doing that. I've got occasional background noise going on here, which might be interrupting things.
Yes,
so,
I've got a 10-year-old that's created noise.
Excellent. Juan Pablo, sitting there in Mendoza, any sort of concluding thoughts on what you've heard today? I mean, we've covered a lot of different angles, and obviously you've been very focused on the viticultural side of it and the winemaking side of it. To a degree, once the wine leaves your shores, bound for export markets, there are many other factors which I think it's probably fair to say you don't have as much control over, but you can also sort of influence in terms of ongoing and future development. What sort of thoughts as you move ahead? Where to take it next?
Well, I think we have to think and design this wine with a full package, as we've been discussing for the last minutes, and we conceive in that way because, as I mentioned before, we started this process thinking about quality and thinking about the soil, not the organic certified as itself, but as a quality concept. And then we started to add, sustainability, for example, and when we think about the soil and the way we manage the soil, we are thinking at the same time of sustainability. For example, when we grow natural weeds that help us to chill the soil temperature from 65 Celsius up to 25. And it's a huge amount of heat that we are avoiding there, avoiding evapotranspiration on the vines and saving water, of course, after the drop irrigation system. But it's a whole concept because we are doing organic practices, but at the same time, we are doing sustainable practices. And at the same time, we are thinking about the consumers and they want a full package because, for example, we've been always doing vegan wines without declaring that because we don't use any animal or allergens, and we are starting to put into the labels to show a full pack of opportunities and fair trade, for example, because you want to care about the environment, but you're not going to care about people, treatment or social, injustice. So it's I think it's a full package. And what I see is that beside the statistics are not the best for us, UK market is the most important in terms of organic reception. And it's not because Sara is here, but Systembolaget too, and Scandinavian market, Sweden market too, are the two main markets for us. But UK especially, we are doing organic business, bulk organic business. We are doing on bottle, and we are receiving more and more requests about this kind of products. So even though the statistics are not the best right now, we are sure that this is the direction. And that's the reason of having 100% of our own vineyards managed in that way, organically, sustainable. Now we have 300 hectares, and we are going to move to 400 by next year, and that's for some reason.
Excellent. Okay, very good to hear. We're out of time, and we've overshot very slightly. So I think that would be quite a good point to possibly wrap up. Although, if anyone on the panel has a burning desire or one last point they'd like to get out, now would be the opportunity. Right. No show of hands. So I think we'll begin to close. So I think we've covered a lot of ground today. It's been a really fascinating conversation, really fascinating discussion, backed by some really strong insights and data as well in many cases. A fantastic sort of spread of different views coming in from different places. So hopefully, firstly, thank you very much to our panel, all of you, for giving up your time and joining us. Great to see you all. Hopefully next time we may be able to do it with a glass of wine and physical presence in a room. I hope there's been something of value, or many things of value, for the audience to take away. We can't see you, but thank you very much for joining us too. And another thank you to our sponsor, Argento, and to Juan Pablo for joining us and providing the continuity link between yesterday's and today's webinars, which has been great. And I might just sort of leave you with a final comment that I jotted down just ahead of starting the webinar, actually. And it was what I perceive as kind of being a change in approach in people's sort of approach to organic food and drink products. And certainly during my time, when I've been thinking about these things and embracing these things, I think the question used to be, is it organic? But now, increasingly, the question is, why isn't it organic? And I think we've sort of achieved that kind of tipping point. I'd like to think we have as well. So, and increasingly more and more people will sort of cross that particular kind of Rubicon. So with that thought, thank you very much all for joining us, and hope to see many of you soon again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.